Hello everyone, I'm Stacy. I'm 15. I'm having trust issues right now, and I'm afraid to leave the house. It's because recently I spent almost a day held hostage, and I thought I'd never get back home. It all started with a harmless passion. I love music, and I was spending a lot of time in the music store listening to and buying different old school records. I really enjoyed it, and soon I had listened to everything that was in the store, except for expensive and rare records that I had no budget for. So I just stood next to the shelf and leafed through them, dreaming to be able to buy them all one day. One of those days, a woman came up to me and complimented me. She said I had great taste in music. I joked back that in addition to taste, I also had a lack of money. We laughed and started talking. It turns out we liked similar bands. We knew all the Doors songs by heart, and we both loved retro record players. I enjoyed our little conversation. It was so pleasant and easy, as if this woman was an exact copy of me. Her name was Helen, by the way. After that, she found me on Facebook and we chatted a lot there. Soon we exchanged phone numbers and agreed to meet at the store to talk about music again. I guess that's how we became friends. Yeah, I had this adult friend and maybe that seems a little weird, but this is a great example of how common interests bring people together. A couple of days later, I was at the limited edition vinyl shelf again, when suddenly Helen came over and said that I should stop looking at those records and that it was time to listen to them. She took the Rolling Stones album and vigorously walked over to the register. To be honest, I was very jealous of her at that moment. I didn't have the money to buy it. But when she paid, she came back to me and offered to let me listen to the album at her house. I was so excited. I'd never had a chance like this before. And now I was sitting in her car holding this record. Amazing. But my fun mood vanished as soon as we entered her house. The place was disturbing. It was dark inside because the windows were heavily curtained. I didn't feel comfortable there. I tried to hide my emotions, but it was really hard. I didn't want to hurt Helen's feelings, so I complimented her house. Then I saw a huge shelf of records and a record player, and I was about to turn on the music to ease the tension. But Helen stopped me and said something that made me realize that something was wrong. She said that the real reason she invited me to her house was to introduce me to her son. And she called out to him, "Billy!" And then I saw a door open in the back room, and a boy in a wheelchair came out to us. He said hello, but I could see how shy and uncomfortable he was. I have to say, I felt the same way. There was an awkward pause for a few seconds. Then Helen broke the silence and told us to chat while she was going to make some tea. I said hi to Billy, but then there was another awkward silence. I was terribly uncomfortable there. It was like I was inside some kind of madness, and it only got worse. That's when I decided that I needed to get out of there. So I just told Billy that I needed to go, and I headed for the door. But suddenly Helen ran into the room and blocked my way. She said it was too early to leave and that I had to talk to her son. At that very second, I noticed that her eyes were just crazy. I panicked, turned, and ran into the kitchen looking for another way out of the house. But all the doors were locked. Helen was chasing me and I didn't have a chance to escape. I quickly pulled out the phone to try to call the police, but after a second, she snatched it from me. Oh God, she looked so scary at that moment. She was clearly going to do something bad. And then she grabbed me and locked me in some room. It was incredibly dark inside, so I tried to grope for a window, but there were none. It looked like I was locked in some closet. Through the door, Helen told me to be quiet until she got back. I tried to kick the door down, but I was too weak to do it, so I just kicked it to no avail. Then I saw a shadow in the gap under the door. It was that boy. He advised me to be quiet because otherwise it would be worse. A wave of fear washed over me and I just fell to the floor and started crying. I didn't understand what was happening or why it was happening or what was waiting for me ahead. How could I not see that this woman was insane? Soon she returned and everything started all over again. She put me in a chair across from Billy and she made me talk to him. It was the strangest thing I've ever felt in my life. Helen made me ask him questions and he answered me awkwardly. The tension eased a little as she left the room. I immediately began to ask the boy to let me go because I wanted to go home to my parents. But he said that it's better to listen to his mother and that it would be over faster. Then I burst into tears again, and Helen led me back to my room. I sat there for a long time, and because I couldn't see the daylight and I didn't know what time it was, all I could do was sit in the dark and cry. I had no idea what my parents were thinking. They didn't know where I was or what was happening to me, and they were probably just going crazy. When I calmed down a little bit, I started thinking about how I could escape from this madhouse. But I was locked in a windowless room, and Helen was watching me all the time. I was starting to think that I was going to spend the rest of my life in this horrible house. But suddenly, I saw the shadow under the door again. It was Billy. He said there was no time to talk because his mom might hear him, and then he slipped me a note through the door and left. I tried to read his scrawny handwriting in the dim light that came from under the door. In the letter, he apologized for what was happening. He said his mom was acting weird because of what had happened in her past. When Billy was born, he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. His father didn't want to take care of a disabled child and left. His mom barely had enough money to take care of him. Plus, the doctor said that, in his case, it was almost impossible to help him. His mother decided to protect him from the cruel world that had rejected her son, and since then she has taken care of Billy alone. And after 15 years of loneliness, she had developed a lot of mental problems. He was lonely too, and his only hobby was music. Recently, his mom decided that he needed friends, and she was taking that thought to the extreme. So she started looking for kids with similar interests, and so she found me. As I understood, Billy was kind of in the same situation I was. He had no phone, no computer, and no communication with the outside world. His mother taught him everything, and she had full control of him. At the end of this note, Billy said he could help me, but only if I promised to get him out of this house too. This was my chance, and I decided to take it. Next time when Helen made me entertain her son, I hinted to Billy that I would do anything to escape. I got a little excited, and I spent the whole evening trying to please Helen. She even said that she thought I deserved dinner. While we were sitting at the table, Billy dropped his spoon and asked me to pick it up. And when I reached for it, he put something in my pocket. It was another note. It said, "Be ready at 2 a.m. There it was. I had hoped that this nightmare would end soon. I couldn't keep track of time, so I just walked around the room to stay awake. I was exhausted. I spent the whole day in complete madness and fear. I wanted to just drop to the floor and pass out, but I had to stay awake. Soon I heard a light knock on the door, and a key appeared under it. I quickly opened the lock and quietly left the room. I just had to get out of this house, but all the doors were locked. When I opened the heavy curtains, I discovered that the windows were locked too. Okay, I didn't have any other options. I took a chair and smashed the glass with it. It made a loud noise, and I knew Helen would come running after me, so I jumped out the window and just ran down the road. I didn't know the neighborhood, so I just ran randomly, looking for people. Soon I saw headlights and started waving to a car. When the car stopped, I started shouting that I was in trouble and asking them to call the police. And that was the end of my suffering. The police brought me home, and I can't tell you how happy I was to see my parents. They had almost gone crazy, and they were looking for me, but all they found was my phone, which was out of town by a lake. The police had a theory that I had gone swimming and drowned. I guess Helen took it there to cover her tracks. Looks like she was planning to hold me in her house for a very long time. Thank God I managed to escape, but it wasn't over yet. I told the police that this woman was also keeping her son locked up. As far as I know, she was arrested that night. There will be a trial soon and justice will be served. Everything ended well. I'm back at home and they'll find a new family for Billy. I hope he'll be all right. But all these events have left their mark on me. I now have fears and phobias. I became afraid of regular people passing by me, and I only feel comfortable in my own home. And all this happened because I trusted a woman I didn't know. So guys, please be careful.